You're listening to The Bridge, an original podcast from the Military Family Advisory Network, where we explore how leaders use data to impact the lives of military families. I'm your host, Shannon Razsadin, MFAN CEO. The Bridge is produced by Rocket Data, a leading innovator in health data, AI, and technology solutions. Let's get to it. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Bridge. We are here to talk about financial wellness, which is something that is really important to all of us as we navigate all things at all times. Finances is something that you cannot pull apart from that. And so I want to, before we dive in and meet our incredible panel of guests, I want to say thank you to our partners at Rocket Data for continuing to support this work. And we're excited to dive into about 30 minutes of conversation, just all things related to military family financial health, as well as the veteran side of the population. We know that there's an interesting continuum that people follow as they navigate military and veteran life. And so I want to start off by giving everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. And David, we'll start with you today.
Thanks, Shannon. David Evans is proud to be here today. I'm the president of the USAA Educational Foundation. We're a operating nonprofit that's sponsored by USAA, the company. It's a separate C3 that focuses on free financial education that's tailored to the needs of the military family. So proud to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Terry, we'll go to you next.
I'm Terry Miller. I'm a consumer education specialist with the FTC. We're the nation's consumer protection agency and within the Division of Consumer and Business Education. Spend a lot of my time having conversations like this. And specifically, we run the Military Consumer Initiative, which has been around for a little over 10 years. And really is the FTC's best effort to protect service members and veterans and their families when it comes to protecting what they've earned. So that's spotting fraud, avoiding fraud, and identity theft and reporting it to us. We're really excited to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terry. And George, over to you next.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on the show today, Shannon. So my name is George Earhart. I'm the executive director of the GoVA Foundation. We are a nonprofit that offers a kind of direct-to-consumer software product for active duty service members, veterans, and their spouses. And we are a financial literacy platform, financial planning platform. We're available across the entire continental United States, Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. And prior to that, I was an Air Force special operator for 22 years with over 13 deployments. So I've seen kind of firsthand where financial strain can really play a part in that. And I'm happy to be part of a team that's addressing it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. And so for those of us who have listened to the Bridge episodes prior, we're really about bridging the data and having conversations about the data with a variety of different stakeholders from both the public and the private sector. And so, like I said before, today we're talking about financial wellness. And I want to start with a broad question for everybody. And please feel free to build off each other and interject. But what do you see as being one of the most pressing challenges facing military and veteran families as it relates to their finances? Anyone want to get started?
So we have about 7,000, a little over 7,000 users across the country, both active duty and in some form of veteran status. And one of the most common themes that we see from the data we collect is emergency fund planning. And the ability to, because when you have a comfortable emergency fund, it's a little bit easier to start thinking more future planning with your resources and things along those lines. But we see that and credit card debt as probably being our two most popular subject areas for service members and veterans to tackle.
Awesome. David, how does that resonate with what you all do?
We see the same thing. So when we look at all the usage of our free materials, it's debt management and then something sort of like credit, budgeting, that kind of flavor, which is in the same flavor that George is talking about. Historically, no one joins the military to be rich, right? But there's a lot of very financially stable people in the military. And it kind of speaks to what a military family brings as like kind of a quote consumer. They bring a lot of discipline. They bring a lot of kind of community aspect, right? In general culture, like we don't talk about personal finance. It's a very taboo. It's what is it like? Politics, religion, and probably finances is the things you don't talk about. But I think that just the nature of like the kind of the closer community of military families, you talk about finances a little bit more than the average person. And I think that in there's good and bad behavior. It goes both ways. You can learn bad habits or really good habits. And in the more volatile financial situation that we're seeing right now, you're starting to see probably a even higher riskier behavior as families try to respond to that, either to save a buck or find more income somewhere else. And that's kind of concerning to me because you can start to lose some of that discipline as you're trying to either just ends meet and put food on the table in a kind of a lesser discretionary budget, or you're trying to chase the market, which some people do. So that's kind of what's on my mind right now, just kind of given the current situation. Terry?
You gave me a great lead in to what what I was going to say, David. From the FTC standpoint, one of the biggest issues that we're seeing is money lost to scams and to fraud. And like you said, David, sometimes it really is folks just trying to maximize on what they have, trying to grow it, right? So I'll give a couple of data points just to sort of drive home what you're saying. Last year, the FTC report, military consumers reported on the whole losing $585 million to fraud. That is a lot of money. And, I love that you said that military consumers, we have the resources. I was a military spouse for a very long time. We have the resources, and word of mouth is really a big deal in the community. And yet those numbers continue to grow year after year. So how is it happening? One way that we're seeing that is, investment scams. So let's say someone does have a bonus, for example, or they see an opportunity that comes through social media or through a text message or something like that. And they think, this might really help me get a windfall or sort of grow this money that we lost after a PCS. But on average, the median that folks are reporting losing, military specific, the median loss for investments is 100 or 1,110.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, people are losing $1,100 on average to investment scams. That is a ton of money lost. For us, education is key. Using that word of mouth through podcasts, through conversations like this to sort of talk about how those scammers get to you. They use those key terms like it's a bank scam that anyone will see, but they'll say, I'm calling from USAA. I'm calling from Navy Federal. They're using those names that we know and trust to really get you to buy in, to believe, to share your banking information, or when they say we need to move your money to protect it, not really knowing that you're moving it into a scammer's bank account instead of your own. Education is key. I'm really glad we're having this conversation today, but from our side, it's money lost in a different number of ways.
And it's a huge problem. And I feel like for the military, there's more consequentiality as it relates to financial health. And when people are having a hard time getting by, in some cases, try to get creative, right? To stretch the dollar further. It's kind of like when you follow your gut. If it sounds too good to be true, it might be too good to be true. And it's really important to pause and take a beat, ask questions, get the information, and then move on things. But that trust piece is so, 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 so important. I want to talk a little bit about, we know that finances really intersect with all different parts of life, from mental health to your housing to, parenting, relationships, all of these things. But what we're seeing through the data is that a significant number of our survey respondents are only making between $25,000 and $75,000, which when you think about a whole household, that's not a lot. That's 40% of our survey respondents reported making between $25,000 and $75,000. We also, to George's point, we see that emergency savings is a challenge. And so like when you hit that bump in the road, do you have the nest egg that you can use to get through a hurdle? What would you guys say to a military family who is really struggling in some cases to make ends meet, but also wants to build that nest egg and that emergency savings fund so they can weather a difficult moment?
I would start with a question, to be honest with you, at the individual level. I'd say, who are you? And who are you when it comes to money? And one of the things that really attracted me to joining the GoVA team, the support service members, was kind of their approach. A fantastic financial literacy platform, but it starts at the individual level by doing a very detailed assessment that we've created with PhDs here at Duke University, UNC here in North Carolina, to like help you understand as an individual what is my money personality, number one, because from birth we all have all these different experiences, different walks of life, and they create these subconscious biases to how we understand what money is, spend money. Some people like me, like I have no problem spending money. Saving is hard for me. Some people are really good at saving, but they don't really have it fulfilled. They're not as fulfilled as they could be because they're a little nervous to spend money. So being able to bring that to the surface and out of the back of your head and in front of you is such a powerful tool to then take advantage of nonprofits, tools that are out there to help you manage your money. And even if you are in that low, moderate income bracket, like you said, to your 40% of respondents, at least knowing how you are with money to me is the first step. And then figuring out how you're going to tackle what resources you have to use them in the best way possible for your family and your situation.
That, and I know I'll use my relationship with my husband. We are like polar opposite ends of the spectrum. He would save everything, hide under a mattress, whatever. And whereas I'm like, shiny object, I can go buy this now, and so it is really important to understand that about ourselves and also our partners and people that you're making financial decisions with. David, I saw it looked like you had something to add there.
Yeah, well, I think what George is talking about, GoVA has kind of starts their programming with what's your money personality. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of the onboarding when a new member gets onto the platform. We're trying to get them to understand who they are. It also helps our platform better support them from a resources perspective. But then every month we're conditioning the user with prompts. There's a theme every month that helps them get more involved with, April was tax is the theme, taxes, right? So, and it allows them to like see something that's tangible, that's like right in front of them relating to money as a topic area, but then how their personality does it. So for example, at 3:30 p.m. on April 15th, I turned in my W-2. But at least now I know like that's just part of my money personality.
Mm-hmm.
And my accountant hated it. It's just, but now I have something like, so, as an example, I can work on, in making little subtle improvements in the next year. But to me, it all starts with who are you? And a lot of financial education when I was retiring out of the service, while I was active duty, it's just, here's how you save for a bank account. But it doesn't say, George, your understanding of money is very different. You need to approach it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a thing that needs to take root in this financial literacy space at the individual level. Who are you? How do you understand money? And then from there, you can then learn what you need to do to meet your goals.
And Shannon, that's kind of what I was saying. Where George started, I think, is the most powerful thing is just being very self-aware of who you are and kind of how you think about money, right? I've said this before. It's the military community is the most diverse community probably in the entire world. And that is the strength of kind of what makes our military so strong. But also comes with that is very diverse ways of thinking about money, right? You have the YOLO families that every time a PCS, let's redesign the whole house. And then you got some families that like top ramen every night because we're just going to pinch every penny. And I don't think there's a necessary, maybe the YOLO family might be the wrong answer, but there's not necessarily a wrong answer because as long as you're aware of it and you can stay disciplined to what your goals are, you can live kind of your life in that way. But it starts with that discipline of being very self-aware of, am I an impulse buyer? Am I a saver? And then managing towards that. And I think that's where education and outreach and that is, how do you do that? How do you stick to a budget? How is sometimes delayed gratification cool? It's not always the cool thing on social media because no one posts videos of them eating top ramen or saving money and delaying buying that boat for 2 years or something. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're on that boat because you saved up for it and you can afford it and still respond to a financial shock, that's the best way to enjoy that boat as opposed to like going out in the water and wondering, will I have enough gas? Will I be able to pay for gas to get back to the dock, to use the bad metaphor there? But that's what I would tell you. You can live comfortably, even though that low discretionary income of the 25 to 75, like you mentioned, Shannon, that the data says. But it's all about knowing who you are and how you're wired. And then two, getting tools in your hand. And like George mentioned, there's a lot out there. I would say the Ed Foundation's a great one. Go check it out. But go just find a budget. Just make a budget and try to stick to it.
No, it's so important. Terry, anything to add there?
I'll just add, I think when we think about these conversations and our habits, I think it's really important to include the kids.
Yes.
Yeah. Amen.
So we've talked a lot recently about text scams, for example. And my kids don't have phones yet. They're a little too young, but we have to have these conversations with them because scammers don't discriminate when they send those text messages, right? The toll, you haven't paid your tolls. Everyone got that text, right? So whether it's a prize or, something like that, or, there's a free benefit to clicking this link and complete this survey and we'll send you money. We have to teach, the young folks in our families too, to, be aware, to ask questions, to not just click things out of curiosity. I'm sure we'll talk about that a whole lot more, but I
Yeah.
will add that I think these conversations are important to have with the kids in the house too, because they have email and text and credit cards, and they may be online shopping and all that stuff too. So I'm making a group conversation.
Yeah, we really see that it also represents an opportunity when you're educating your kiddos. It can reinforce those, good habits for the adult too. And, sometimes, as we talked about, like talking about finances can feel taboo, but when we're talking to kids and educating them, it presents this new type of opportunity and way of looking at that. I'd love to chat. We mentioned PCSing. We know that from our research, 51% of military families who had PCS in the last 24 months were food insecure. We see a PCS as a huge point of financial risk as it relates to things like paying for first and last month's rent, just the out of pocket expenses that you then later get reimbursed for. Terry, I want to start with you for this one. We also see some risks and some scams and some things that are existing around a PCS. What should military families be aware of that they might not have at the forefront of their mind when they're going through or getting ready for a PCS?
So scammers target all of us in a lot of different ways. And the key word here when it comes to military families is frequency. So we move more. I say we no longer, no longer moving, but we move so much more than the average bear, which means that we're selling homes and purchasing homes. We're filling out online rental applications. We're sharing information just on the housing standpoint, but then we're withdrawing kids from one school, enrolling them in another. We're filling out applications to get them in aftercare at the YMCA. We're moving our shipping, or sorry, our mailing address from one state to another, tax transfers, applying for jobs. Just the sheer frequency of information sharing that PCSing families have to share means that there's just more entry points. Data breaches are happening across the board, right? So if you're sharing your information on multiple platforms, there's more opportunity, unfortunately, for potential identity theft to happen. So really, some of these things are just inevitable, right? We have to have somewhere to live. We have to sell a home in order to find a new one. We have to do some of this. But the important thing really is asking questions, is slowing down. I know there's so much to do. We did one Oconus move, and oh my gosh, the amount of logistics, right, to get overseas and then back again was insane. But just slowing down. If we are doing a cross country drive, making sure that you're using a credit card instead of a debit card. So if there's fraudulent activity, if they steal your credit card, you have more protections with a credit card to dispute the charges with the credit card company than if, say, it's tied to your bank account. Asking why someone needs your social security number. Do you need it for my rental application? Do you actually need it right now? And not sharing it just because someone asks for it. Making sure that you're using secure sites when you are filling out, rental applications and things like that, but also doing your research. And so that might mean looking up a rental company and typing in the company's name plus scam or something like that to see what other people are saying before you pay that money. Give them your debit card or your credit card number, your personal information. So education is key. I'll wrap with, the 4 Ps. This is kind of the easiest way to know. So often if you get a text message and they say, I'm calling from your bank, and they say USAA, they're pretending, right? They could be pretending to be a person or a company that you know. So the pretending, there's pressure. So they want you to pay or give personal information right away, which is what I'm saying. Ask questions. Why do you need that? Is this, would my bank call and ask you this? They want you to pay in certain ways. So it may be through a payment app or through cryptocurrency
Right.
or, often ways that make it really hard to get your money back. And often they'll say that there's a problem or a prize. So there's a problem you need to solve and they're going to help you fix it. Where there's a prize and all you have to do is give personal information and pay for it. So pretending there's a problem or a prize, there's pressure, and then certain ways to pay. Those are kind of the quick ways to spot it, whether you're moving or just staying still and getting it on a text message. But education is key, and making sure everybody in the family knows those 4 Ps is really helpful to avoid them.
Yeah, no PCS was ever not stressful, right? So the stress that's happening, waiting for your household goods, figuring out where you're going to stay while, you're waiting for housing, all of these things, I think that that can often put people in this pressure cooker situation where they're just going to say okay to things. But to your point, Terry, like taking that time, taking that beat, stopping and really asking yourself that question, because we hear about it all the time of people who are getting scammed out of a job situation. They're getting applying for a rental property, and then all of a sudden all their information is out there. And for military families, there's more vulnerability too, as we think about things like security clearances and all those other layers that get added in. George, do you have anything to add related to that with what you're seeing?
Yeah, just in my experience, so I was a senior enlisted leader, which largely focuses on health and welfare of your organization and the people in it. Sometimes one of the challenging things to do is have a very good kind of sponsorship program. As people are coming into your unit, taking care of people leaving your organization as well. So I had a really great first sergeant 1 year or over a few years, and one of the things he did was he would try and connect people with the base assets, whether it's nonprofits or things on base that'll help, especially those lower tiered enlisted ranks who are PCSing where money is tight. And with regard to food, like, I remember him telling me on the phone with an incoming person, said, "Hey, you're going to be here in a year or 6 months, whatever." At the time, he had some time. He goes, "Take your monthly food budget and triple it." I remember asking him about it, like, "Hey, what? Like, why?" He goes, "Hey, there's all these expenses you're looking at, first and last month rent for when you get to the new assignment, or hotel fees while you're in transit. But what people don't think about is maybe that last 30, 40 days in your previous assignment, you're probably eating out a lot more than you typically would. First 30, 40 days of your new assignment, same thing. You're probably eating out at restaurants more than you typically would, which tends to be more expensive. Secondly, when you live in a place for a while, a year or two, your pantry tends to be a little more stocked, your freezer's a little more full, and you're kind of going to be starting from scratch.
Hmm.
So just trying to say, hey, it's going to just be more expensive to eat, or you're in transit on a cross country move. It's just the food costs alone. And then if you have a family, as you can imagine, like that's $100 a night at a mid-range restaurant,
Yes.
like alone. So yeah, so it was really great advice with regard to food and like planning to eat. Just like any military operation, food, water, beans, bullets, all that stuff. It's really a part of it, and I thought that was really good feedback. So it's like a good rule of thumb for the organizations we support. I tell people plan on essentially 3 times your food budget for a PCS move. It's
That's
probably
a
good.
great way of thinking of it. And we have a program that we launched at Fort Cavazos, we're expanding this year, that is essentially providing people with all the things that you have to replace every time that you move, knowing that that is a significant hit to your budget. So everything from like your olive oil, your salt, your pepper, to cleaning supplies, everything that they won't move for you. And when you're on this hamster wheel of PCSing every 2.5 years, that's a hit that just keeps on happening to the budget that people, to your point, it can surprise us. And these little surprises add up and then can put people in a vulnerable situation. David, do you have anything to add to that?
Thought Terry captured it well. You got so much going on that you're more susceptible to scams and also just bad decisions. And that's kind of where George was going. Hey, save away 3 times. That's a great rule of thumb for anyone that's PCSing. But you multiply that across just putting food on the table or getting food in your stomach, but then you make it to all the other things, cable subscriptions, X, Y, Z, and then you just move into, oh, my cabinet doesn't fit in here anymore. What, I got to go get a new cabinet, and you're selling something on Marketplace. I mean, we've all been down that path, right? And you multiply that across 20, 30 different things that a military household's trying to manage during that significant life event. And then to Gary's great point, you do it every 2 or 3 years, right? Like, and I would just say The one thing I would tell our listeners is every time you PCS is a chance to reset your financial situation, because sometimes you get locked into a mortgage or you know, a rental situation that you thought was smart, but then you realize it's not, just because of you actually learn the cost of living. So do your education as much as you can at your current station before you go to your next duty station, and try to George's answer around the sponsorship. Like, just ask people in your unit, or these Facebook pages now for the communities are really, really helpful. And you can go and kind of search for questions and things in there that have probably been answered. A situation that you think is right, and you realize, whoa, I'm overpaying for what I actually can bring home every month. And just doing your education and your research ahead of time will put you in the best situation possible.
Yeah, I think that one of those other moments that's a good time to evaluate is when you're thinking about getting out, be it leaving the service, retiring. We just went through that, or we're still going through it. I think it's a multi-year process. But when my husband made the decision to retire, you do the math, you think about, okay, what's the take home? Also, like, what's the gap that we might have as it relates to salary for a certain amount of time? That BAH, man, we miss it. And so I think that that's another opportunity for you to take a moment and really do the math. There are some great things that the military brings as far as job security. And in a moment like right now, I think that that's a huge value add to so many people. For those of you who have already transitioned, Terry, your military spouse, I feel like once military spouse, always military spouse. Anything to add there as far as the transition time?
I'll bring up a case, an enforcement case that we did, and how important it is to do the research. So last year, the FTC settled with an online healthcare career training company. When I think of transition, I think of filling that gap. So is the spouse needing to go back and get more education? Is the service member needing to,
Yes.
upskill or use the GI Bill for new skills or something like that? Sometimes that's an entry point that we see, not necessarily for scams, but for deceptive business practices. $43.5 million was a settlement with this company. So I'll tell you what happened. The FTC alleges that this company lured service members, so service member spouses, into enrolling in this company through deceptive ads and inflated employment outcomes. And we work with these prominent companies, and so we fought to get that money back. And service members and spouses, $27.8 million in debt cancellation, because you're losing a lot of money to these deceptive business practices, thinking that you're upskilling, that you're making a good investment for this next chapter. And unfortunately, it was fraud. And so some of that was also cash back, money back. We call it redress, money back to consumers. It's harmful, not just, to your credit and, to your, it's harmful to your GI Bill, your My CAA, like all of these things that you thought you were maximizing, and you're losing it. So just being mindful to doing the research, using your veterans, like the VSOs and, some of the resources you have as a veteran as you're transitioning out, to make sure that you're maximizing your benefits and not, unfortunately, paying bad business or something like that. And so that transition can be pretty costly in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. So, for people who are listening who might not be military connected, but they are in the finance space and they serve military families or veteran families, what would be something that you'd want to make sure that they know related to serving this community? David, I'll start with you on that.
I think this community of, especially mill transitions, it's been kind of a thing now, maybe for 15 or so years. And it's been interesting to watch it grow up to a kind of a very well-run spot, but there's still a lot of players in the space. And I think that military transitioning service members and mill spouses and mill families, we all know that they don't know what they don't know until you're about 2-3 years post transitions. Shannon, you still got a little bit of time. Don't be too hard on yourself. But it can be really, really confusing. And I think all of our organizations care about serving military families. I think it's incumbent upon all of us who lead these organizations to be really, really good at what you can be good at, and find ways to build bridges. See my pun there with the name of
That's
our
good. That
podcast?
was good.
Like,
Yeah.
of how we can make good referrals to other organizations that do something better than us. I feel like there's a natural tendency to try to be everything to that military family so you can serve them. I think there's an opportunity for all of us who lead these organizations to be really, really good at what you can be good at, and then find ways to build partnerships and bridges so you can best serve military families. It's for the mil families that I see make the transition well is they eat their vegetables. So like they do the things that you don't necessarily want to do, like I need to decelerate my spending. I need to maybe live in a more of a starter home or rent for a year until I can really get my quote sea legs. And then I can kind of really see what my new normal looks like. And especially from a finances perspective, I got out and I was making the same amount that I made when I was an '03 captain, 6 years of service. And I thought, cool, no difference in my cost of living adjustment, how I live. And I quickly realized all the benefits of a military paycheck and taxes and things like that. And your dollar doesn't go as far. And, I've had to really, really do a good self assessment of where I was financially. But thankfully, I found tools and mentors to help me do that. Maybe that's the last thing is raising your hand and saying, I don't know this as good as I should have. Then, like, reaching out to someone who's 5 years post transition to say, all right, help me out. And like, I've never had a veteran turn me down for a cup of coffee or not answer questions. It's kind of that cultural thing that we want to help the next person in line. And I would say, I would encourage people to do that. Like, ask those hard questions, find people that are, a couple years ahead of you and asking them, like, hey, where'd you screw up? Or where did you do really well? Right. And like, they'll share it all with you.
Yeah, I think people are always looking forward to the opportunity to pay it forward and to help someone else. I think that's something that's really intrinsic in the military community. George, what about you?
Matter if you have one stripe or 4 stars, you will get out of it what you put into it 100%. I always tell guys who are active duty right now, like, if you're not, well, you have time in front of you. If you're not using benefits for education and training outside of the military, like, for a credential or a degree or a skill, you're leaving money on the table, right? Like, you don't get that, but it's there if you want to use it. It just comes down to time management. Turns out you spend less when you're doing homework on the weekends. But
Fair.
then really what it is do take advantage of those resources you have available today with an eye on the future, like your next ridgeline. And you'd also be surprised too if you took a PMP course, like that will help you be a better NCO and a better, officer, to manage projects. And it'll also transition very well to life after the military. And while you're in service, you can get it paid for. Think of those things, and yeah, it'll take up some of your time, but the benefit and the value add at the end is great. To David's point, like you get out of it, we get into financial institutions that want to support our community. Obviously I banked with USAA since pretty much my first assignment. And like most service members or Navy Federal, those banks are great at, do you have a deployment coming up? Are you getting out of the military? Are you retiring? Do we have your rank right? Because that's their customer. But a lot of people in the service also, they bank with more traditional firms as well that have maybe some idea. If you're a more traditional firm that doesn't have a lot of military customers, or you want to broaden your ability to support that community, understand those nuanced things. Can you help your customer know what this was it Soldiers, Sailors, Airmen Act is for their credit card interest rates while they're deployed? Can you help them
Yeah.
navigate that? USA did for me on every deployment. you know,
Mhm.
uh, things along those lines. And there's unique things both federally across the continent, across the United States, as well as like state things. Veteran active duty members in North Carolina, are you aware of some of these benefits financially that as a bank you could help them with?
Yeah.
That'll go a very long, to me, that goes a long way. And also building trust with the community, like USAA, Navy Federal, Roger Bank's another fantastic bank I learned about this last year. They understand that, and that's part of their identity, and that's what they do. And you have almost an instant trust with the community. You're speaking my language, and you understand some of these financial things are a bit complicated, and you're helping me navigate it.
Yeah. No, that's great. And Terry, what about you? Just if someone's serving the military that has no military connection, transition space or otherwise, what would you say to them?
Well, self promotion, militaryconsumer.gov is a really great one to
Yeah.
start. Our lane is really protecting what you've earned, is making sure that whether you're spending it, you're earning it, you're borrowing, you're looking to save and invest, or simply just protecting, that you have the tools in your toolbox to, identify problem, whether it's breaking a lease, a CRA, is it, the lending protections that service members have in terms of interest rates. All of these things, militaryconsumer.gov is a really great place for someone who's interested to start. We have a toolkit that's specifically for personal financial managers and, folks who are working with the military to access data points that I've shared and just very plain language. This is what it is. This is how the scams work, and this is how you can avoid them. The other one that I'll mention too, David, I love what you said about focusing on what we're good at and not delegating, but reaching out to partners who have, that skill set. vsafe.gov is a really great one. Last year we launched, it was a call center, a website, and vsafe is, the goal is really no wrong door in terms of fraud for veteran communities. So, whether you are looking to not lose your education benefits to fraud, if it's with funerals and memorials, if it's your pension and your disability benefits, there's resources there that kind of cross, interagency resources. So if it happens, how do I report it? Who do I report it to? What are the common scams that happen? What do they look like? I'm a caretaker. How do I avoid these when I'm filling out paperwork for, my veteran? So VSafe is one of those, like you were saying, David, that's not my wheelhouse, but the resources
Yes.
are all here. And there is no wrong door. So if you call and I'm calling, but I need to talk about, this, then you are connected to the right person and the right resource. So those are two that I would share for someone who's not in the military space, but really wants to help and get very practical, quick explanation and resource.
Yeah. No, that's so important. And we talked about this before, but at the end of the day, people don't care who they get the support from. They care they get the best support that they need when they need it. And so it's really incumbent on all of us to refer to those trusted organizations. I certainly am not about creating a financial personality test to help me and help military families understand how they spend. And I'd love to refer to George's team. And I think that the more we can do that, the better we will all be at serving this community. And so to wrap us up, one last question to the military family who found that 1 in 4 had $500 or less in emergency savings. So 25%, according to MFAN's most recent survey. What message do you have to them? Who wants to kick us off?
I would say you're not alone.
Yeah.
I think especially for families who are just getting started out in the military, right? There's a lot of demands. The military life is a little bit more new to you, and it's okay. We've all been there. Even on the officer side, it's not uncommon. And it goes back to kind of my earlier point of like, there's less discretionary income in the military, and the ones that do well find ways to leverage their benefits for financial stability and financial freedom. And that also includes just raising your hand and asking maybe one of those more senior military spouses or military supervisor at work. And you say, like, hey, how'd you do it? Or I'm struggling with this. How do you, when you were there, what did you do? And you learn little things like George's example of, hey, when you PCS, triple your food budget. We've all learned those little rules of thumb and suffer in silence. We've all been there and asked the question, and don't be ashamed of it. Right? You think you're doing everything right and you're still struggling, raise your hand. There's lots of great resources too on the installation. I know that there's sometimes a little bit more distrust or, hey, will this help? Will this affect my service member's career? I think we've come a really long way in cultural wise and by policy wise, right? Of removing some of those barriers. And there's free financial counselors at the installation. The Aid and Relief Societies are great resources. There's free education organizations out there that are wanting to help you and help military families. And I just encourage you, raise your hand and just ask for help if you need it.
I love it. Terry, what about you?
Just to echo what David was saying, about the shame and embarrassment. Sometimes some of this down to the last 500 might be because you made a bad investment or you lost money, to fraud or something like that. It happens. Scammers are clever. And so just really understanding that shame and embarrassment can have a place, but don't stay there too long. We are very connected in the military community, which I think is beautiful. And so you have the relief societies, you PFMs, you have your chain of command, you have all of these resources so that you don't sit there too long. And one of the things we find is that, the quicker you respond to a problem, the more likely you are to hopefully be able to recover the money that you lost if it's a scam, or to recover from identity theft. The quicker you respond, the more resources and options that you have for recovery. And so just using that resource, the pile of resources, the network that you have. And so I'll wrap with, reporting. So reporting to the FTC, report fraud.ftc.gov, so that we can tell the stories that we tell today in education, but also bring the cases that we bring to get money back to people who've lost it. And if it's identity theft, it's identitytheft.gov. One of the things that we ask you to do is tell us what happened. One, because it gives us the story, but also there's a recovery plan there. Sometimes when you're in a financial bind, it can feel like drinking from a fire hose. The amount of information and overwhelm and embarrassment and shame, and a recovery plan with a checklist of you need to do this, and let's fill out this form, and the FTC sends it for you. A checklist sort of helps to like bring down the level of anxiety so that you can get your finances back on track. So take your time. Don't keep it a secret.
Right.
And use your resources.
I love that. Don't sit in the shame. Like, I think that that's a really important message to people. Like, we all make bad choices. We all have, made mistakes. Own it, right? And then take the steps to fix it. And you can't do that by just being paralyzed by that shame that we can feel when we make a mistake related to our finances. George, how about you to close us out?
Yeah. Know who you are, and
Yeah.
know how it is that you understand money. I think that's super important. It's one of the things I really value about what my team does, but also stay engaged. So we talked earlier that, the emergency fund is one of the key top areas that we see a lot of our users interested in. Little steps go a long way. And part of us making sure they understand financial health and getting to where you want to be isn't an overnight process. It takes time and discipline and iteration, and a little goes a long way. So if you have a $500 emergency fund, and you only have $100 of discretionary funding, $20 in your savings, padding that emergency fund, $80 to bring down some debt. Eventually that will start to, eventually you'll start to be able to put more in your fund and you'll have less debt. And they're just little iterative baby steps along the way. And ask for help. The resources are there. There's no shame in that game. Stay engaged. And for leaders in the service right now, financial readiness is mission readiness. If your troops, if your soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Guardians, Coast Guard, I think I got them all. If you're asking them to do really dangerous things in bad parts of the world, but in the front of their mind, their spouse at home is struggling with the grocery bill, or there's just something going on, they're not in the fight. And that's where we need them. So I would even encourage leaders to break some of those barriers and taboos about finances and readiness, because it really does affect the effectiveness of their organizations.
I love that. I love that. Well, David, Terry, George, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I think that there's a lot here. There's a lot of information that we'll share after too. I think some of those resources that you mentioned, Terry, are really, really important. And if you do fall victim to one of these scams, please, to Terry's point, like, do tell people about that, because you can help another family hopefully avoid the same type of pitfall. To each of you, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for all that you do for this incredible community. And for everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode of The Bridge. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A special thanks to the MFAN team and Rocket Data for making this podcast possible. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in. You can listen to this episode and more on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you found today's discussion to be helpful, please subscribe, leave us a review, and you can share today's episode with others who you think would benefit from it. We would love to hear your thoughts. You can find MFAN on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, YouTube, and you can always connect with us on our website at www.mfan.org. Until next time, let's go where the data lead us, and let's make life better for military families.